Since there were many aunties in the city, they did not catch any attention and blended well into the crowd when walking down the streets. Feng Ruhua thought that the city would have been in a state of chaos, however, it turned out that it was very peaceful and no different compared to a usual day. If one really wanted to spot a difference, it would be that the streets were cleaner, and the shops on both sides of each street were decorated in red. It seemed that the whole city was preparing for one thing, the wedding of their city's owner. Gossip floated through the air, and naturally, the best place to sit and listen to it was naturally at a restaurant. Hence, Gu Shijiu and Feng Ruhua entered a very crowded restaurant. This restaurant catered to the low to middle income group. There were not many nobles here. Instead, the place was filled with ordinary people. The vast majority of officials and nobles in the city were typically very tight-lipped about their work. It was not easy to get some gossip from their mouths. However, ordinary people here were different. They were honest and direct and did not generally keep any secrets. Therefore, they had come to the right place. Gu Shijiu and Feng Ruhua simply sat at the restaurant for half an hour, and they had gotten all the information they needed. For example, the wedding tomorrow was not in the official residence of the city's owner. Instead, it would be held in Zhengde Square, which was said to have been beautifully decorated. For the grand wedding ceremony tomorrow, the city owner requested everyone to celebrate with him. All the people would have a day off, and everyone could be present in Zhengde Square to watch the ceremony. They also heard that there was a snake invasion in the city last night. Nonetheless, the snakes had been captured, so the problem had been averted. The official news that was released to the public stated that being greeted by ground dragons was an auspicious sign and was God's way of blessing the wedding. To appreciate the grace from God, and to recognize the hard work of the soldiers who worked tirelessly to guard the city during the day and night, the city owner had given these snakes to the Tianxiang restaurant, the largest restaurant in the city, and instructed the master chef to cook it. The dishes would be distributed to all the people in the town, regardless of status and occupation. When Feng Ruhua heard the last piece of news, her facial expression had changed. Clearly, Yun Yanli and his men had found out that the snakes were sent here to spy on them. Most of the snakes were just common snakes that had no special abilities. Therefore, Feng Ruhua was not too concerned about them. However, her Shaoqi was the king of the snakes, her precious baby. She could not lose it. Feng Ruhua made up her mind to pay a visit to Tianxiang restaurant to see if her baby Shaoqi was there. Gu Shijiu grabbed her and shook her head. This is a trap. Feng Ruhua was not stupid. Naturally, she understood that this was a trap to draw her out, but if she did not go to confirm that Shaoqi was there, she would not be at ease. Miss Gu, please let me go. Rest assured, I will be careful. I will not expose myself. Gu Shijiu could understand her situation, therefore, she said, I will accompany you. No, there must be a lot of ambushes in place. Miss Gu, you are the future Devil Queen. You can't be hurt, or the Devil King. Gu Shijiu disregarded her last statement and teleported right after she said, don't talk so much nonsense. Let's go. In the blink of an eye, they appeared in the kitchen of the Tianxiang restaurant. This was truly the most luxurious restaurant in Luohua City. At that moment, it was nearly noon, and there were many guests in the restaurant. The place was packed with people constantly moving about. Gu Zijia's estimations were accurate, so they ended up where they wanted to be, in the courtyard, outside the kitchen of the Tianxiang restaurant. There were not many people in the yard, but it was not entirely empty as well. Additionally, the two of them were merely 5 meters away from a chef, and there was nothing in between them. Feng Ruhua was shocked. It would appear as though the two of them were exposed. She subconsciously wanted to attack the chef but was stopped abruptly by Gu Shijiu. Don't do anything rash. I have cast a spell to hide us. He can't see us. The cook had obviously not seen them. He even took the opportunity to pee in the corner of the yard before returning to the restaurant. Feng Ruhua could help but Gu Shijiu a thumbs up in admiration. Miss Gu, you are brilliant. She was very impressed by how quickly Gu Shijiu could think of everything in advance. There were dozens of baskets in this yard, all of them looked rather big. Each basket had a lid on it, and there was a creaking sound coming from the inside. It was evident that the snakes were inside. Feng Ruhua took 2 steps forward, but Gu Shijiu held her wrist and whispered, "Don't act rashly. There are traps around here. There are also people hiding in the dark." Feng Ruhua subconsciously looked around but did not see anyone. She was dismayed. There is a wizardry barrier at the northwest corner of this courtyard. There are 18 masters inside there. Each of them is a master with at least a level 3 spiritual power. In the kitchen, in the lobby, and even on the second floor, these people are not just cooks and guests. There are 6 masters in the kitchen. There are 10 inside the restaurant, and there are 4 on the second floor of the private room. Gu Shijiu was talking to Feng Ruhua through a directed audio spell. Feng Ruhua was stunned. She had not sensed that there were ambushes in the vicinity. In fact, she did not even pick up any signs. She had certainly not expected Gu Shijiu to have gathered so much information just from standing in this courtyard for a brief moment. What an amazing observation. Perhaps it was not an exaggeration to say that she could be on par with the Devil King. Nonetheless, given that Feng Ruhua was personally involved in this matter, she clearly did not want to believe in what Gu Shijiu had said. Being able to sense her eagerness to still go after the baskets, Gu Shijiu merely looked down in disappointment. Without Di Fui around, she needed to prove her value to the team so that they would follow her instructions. She wanted to be able to save Di Fui with minimal cost. Instead of continuing to convince Di Fui's subordinate, she lifted her finger, and a gust of wind seemed to storm toward one of the baskets. Pack! The lid opened halfway. Schwa! All of a sudden, many figures appeared from all directions. A big net also descended from the sky to cover the basket tightly. Fortunately, after Gu Shijiu had already teleported to the roof of the restaurant with Feng Ruhua, otherwise, they would definitely have been trapped in the big net. Finally, she understood what Gu Shijiu was telling her. To confirm the accuracy of Gu Zijia's comments from before, she counted the number of people who were present. Consequently, she now had full respect for Gu Shijiu. The numbers were exact. "Miss Gu, you are a god." Meanwhile, Yun Yanli's men searched the entire place but could not find even a single strand of hair. It seems that it was just the wind blowing. Otherwise, there was no way the culprit could escape from the net. Perhaps, you are right. I have not heard of any subordinates of the Devil King that could avoid the net. Seeing nothing out of the ordinary, the men dispersed and returned to their hiding places. Feng Ruhua sighed. I don't seem to be able to save these snakes. If she did it forcibly, it would surely alarm these people. She was not worried about going into battle, but she knew that the entire plan was at stake because it might expose Gu Zijia's whereabouts. Is Shaoqi there? Gu Shijiu asked. Feng Ruhua shook her head. No, it is not there. Since Shaoqi was their primary concern, the 2 of them decided to leave the place. Miss Gu, do we want to pay a visit to Elder Kuan? Feng Ruhua had been subconsciously treating Gu Shijiu as her new leader ever since the incident from before. Gu Shijiu shook her head. No, Kuan Zuyas' identity has not been exposed yet. If my guesses are accurate, the monitoring facilities in the Golden Room have been repaired. If we go blindly, we might get into unnecessary trouble. Let's go Jingda Square to check the place out. What about my Shaoqi? Gu Shijiu frowned at the question. She took a deep breath before responding. I believe that Shaoqi has fled or what? Or it is now hanging in the most prominent location in Jingda Square, waiting for us to be hooked. Feng Ruhua remained silent. She gripped her fingers so tightly that they were starting to turn pale. After a long pause, she tugged Gu Zijia's sleeves. Let's go back. Gu Shijiu raised her eyebrows as she thought that Feng Ruhua would be desperate to save the snake. She did not expect. Shaoqi is my spiritual pet. It is very precious to me, but we should not expose our plan now. Gu Shijiu breathed a sigh of relief. Feng Ruhua was one of Di Fui's guardians. Fortunately, during this critical moment, she was still able to see things clearly. She bit her lips and patted Feng Ruhuo's shoulder gently. Do not worry, Yun Yanli will surely use Shaoqi as bait to lure us out. He will not let it die. I will try to save it tomorrow. Feng Ruhuo nodded. Understood. What do we do next? I have to go to Zhengde Square for a while. Gu Shijiu wanted to survey the place in order to make the specific arrangements. You sit in the restaurant first. I will come back to get you later. Miss Gu, let me be with you. It will be safer. Rest assured, even if I see Shaoqi hung there, I will not take any action. Feng Ruhuo did not agree to separate from her. No, you should go to the restaurant. You can find out more information if you are there. It only from knowing yourself and knowing the opponent that we can win the battle. After Gu Shijiu finished her sentence, she did not wait for Feng Ruhuo's reply and had teleported away. Feng Ruhuo had no other option than to enter the restaurant and continue to listen to the gossips from the people. To her surprise, she indeed heard some useful information. Since Legua City had not experienced the blood rain for more than 10 days, the people had become greatly suspicious of Yun Yanli. Many masters had been secretly investigating the matter. All of a sudden, Gu Shijiu had returned to the restaurant to meet with Feng Ruhuo. Just as they were about to teleport away, the streets suddenly became crowded. Someone shouted, "The city owner and his future lady are walking around the city." Gu Zijia's heart pounded as she looked down from the window. The pedestrians on the street had automatically retreated to both sides to free up space for the important guests to walk by. The 10 guards at the front cleared the path for a carriage to pass the street. The style of the vehicle was not too fancy, but it still looked elegant. There were 2 people sitting side by side inside, one with a white robe and the other with a green dress. The young man in white was handsome and elegant. He looked like a man of noble status but also carried an evil aura around him. This person was Yun Yanli. The lady in green beside him was beautiful, like a fairy. There was a green veil on her face that only revealed a pair of clear watery eyes. Catching a glimpse of her was enough to make any person tremble. This was Gu Shijiu. The entire scene was overwhelming for the real Gu Shijiu as she stood and watched. Especially when she saw Yun Yanli holding the hand of Gu Shijiu. Each finger had crossed one another while Gu Shijiu was seen leisurely leaning on Yun Yanli. Since Gu Shijiu was leaning leisurely on Yun Yanli, it seemed that the 2 people in the carriage were very loving and harmonious. On the contrary, Feng Ruhuo was furious. She naturally knew that the Gu Shijiu that the people saw was actually Kun Shui. As the real Gu Shijiu was the fiancé of the Devil King, this scene was detrimental to Gu Zijia's reputation. She wanted to contact Kun Shui using her directed audio spell to instruct him to keep his hands off Yun Yanli. However, Gu Shijiu took a prawn and blocked her mouth with it. She whispered, "Do not contact him using the directed audio spell. He is too close to Yun Yanli right now. The man could possibly hear the conversation. To make matters worse, this could also be a trap." Feng Ruhuo's forehead had drops of sweat leaking from it all of a sudden. She seemed to have finally figured out Yun Yanli's underlying intention and quickly covered her mouth. She would no longer attempt to contact Kun Shui for the time being. The 2 ladies were still on the 2nd floor of the restaurant at this time. It was not too high up for them to just jump down, but the streets were rather crowded. It was quite noisy in the restaurant, so the dialogue between Gu Shijiu and Feng Ruhuo was not audible to the people nearby. Meanwhile, the carriage seemed to be passing the street at a rather slow pace. Once it passed, Gu Shijiu immediately left the place with Feng Ruhuo. In fact, she had come and gone several times, but no one in the city had realized it. Of course, Yun Yanli was not aware of it too. He was too distracted by the lovely lady leaning on his shoulder to think about anything else. In fact, the man looked somewhat satisfied. The Gu Shijiu next to him was gentle, warm, and tender. She also smelled sweet like a flower. This was a luxury that he had never gotten before, so Yun Yanli felt like he was in a dream. Nonetheless, he was also aware that the beautiful woman next to him had not voluntarily leaned on him or held his hand. Yun Yanli had blocked the acupuncture points on her body, making her unable to move. Shijiu, did you see how happy everyone here is? A lot of people are praising us as the perfect couple. Yun Yanli whispered to the beauty beside him while applying slightly more pressure on her soft hand. What the hell is a perfect pair? It certainly could not be what they had at that moment. Kun Shui almost had goosebumps just listening to the man. His life had been a little difficult lately. From the morning, Yun Yanli had been like a mushroom in his golden house. The man had been trying to talk sweetly to Kun Shui the entire time until they passed through the city's streets. Shijiu, do you know the identities of Di Fui's subordinates? Kun Shui ignored him. Gu Shijiu might not know Di Fui's subordinates, but Kun Shui surely knew them. Nonetheless, he would never tell Yun Yanli. Someone must have entered the city just now to retrieve the snakes that I had captured. Clearly, they were not successful. However, the person who tried to recover the snakes must be really skilled. My net did not manage to catch him or her. If you were not with me the entire time, I would have surely suspected that the person was you. The way the person moved made it seem like he or she was teleporting about the place. Kun Shui suddenly froze momentarily. He was certain that Gu Shijiu was the person behind the incident. Hence, she must have made her way back into the city. Before he could contemplate the consequences, Yun Yanli seemed to pull Gu Shijiu closer to him. Kun Shui almost fell into his arms. He snorted in his heart and tried to sit straight, but Yun Yanli had wrapped his arms around Kun Zuyu's waist. He then blew hot air into his ear and said, Shijiu, tomorrow is the day we are getting married. Are you happy? Kun Shui wanted to kick the man. He tried to push him away but was unsuccessful. Instead, he uttered, happy as hell. Fortunately, the real Gu Shijiu was also very repulsive, so Kun Zuyu's actions were reasonable. Yun Yanli had no reason to be suspicious. He went closer to Gu Shijiu and said, Shijiu, I am already looking forward to our first night. Chapter 2547, Where is the Jade Statue? Kun Shui tried to suppress the inner powers in his body so that he would not attract any unnecessary attention. He tried very hard to stay calm the entire time and kept his head down. He thought to himself, Yun Yanli, I swear, if I don't get you, I will no longer consider myself as a Kun. The mythological creature used to flirt with Yun Yanli, but it was just for fun. He did not really have feelings for the man. He glanced at Yun Yanli beside him, like a wolf in sheep's clothing looking at a little deer around him. Yun Yanli felt a sudden chill down his spine. However, he did not keep this discomfort in his heart. Instead, once again, he pulled the person beside him nearer. Shijiu, regardless of who you love in your heart, in the end, you will be mine. Where is the jade statue? Kun Shui ignored his confession and asked him for the 180th time. Yun Yanli's charming face immediately turned serious upon hearing this question. It is only a jade statue. Aren't you tired of asking me? Nope, not one bit. Where is it? Why do you care so much about it? Is it really Di Fui? Yes. It is him. Give it back to me. Yun Yanli was speechless. He had already been very sure that the jade statue was Di Fui's body, but right now, he felt uncertain again. Nonetheless, the more troubling matter was that Gu Shijiu would keep asking him this question every single time she saw him. It was as if she was drilling it into his brain. Yun Yanli would automatically turn hostile every time he heard it. Even on such a wonderful occasion, she just had to ruin it by asking this question again. Yun Yanli finally had enough. Gu Shijiu, you need to give up. Tomorrow, I will turn it into dust. Whether it is Di Fui or not, you can't do anything about it anymore. Don't lie to yourself. I am sure you cannot destroy it. Just watch me tomorrow. I don't have to hide anything from you. I had gotten the secret skill from God last night, and now, I know the way to shatter the jade statue completely. What is the way? You will know it tomorrow. Yun Yanli, where is the jade statue? Yun Yanli was fuming. How could she ask him the question again? He was utterly annoyed. As a result, he abruptly announced the end of the trip to the city, even though he had originally planned to stay a little longer. He told Gu Shizhou that he would bring her back to the Golden House. Kun Shui was also relieved to return. He was not afraid of being held captive in the place. Strangely, his biggest concern was that Yun Yanli would have sex with him forcibly on the eve of the wedding. He was not sure whether he should even resist it or not. With his abilities, he could escape from the place, but it would surely expose the fact that the real Gu Shizhou had escaped. If he did not resist. Oh, what the hell? Perhaps it would be fine as long as he was the one on top. However, he knew that Yun Yanli would definitely not be willing to let that happen. Therefore, Kun Shui decided to annoy Yun Yanli further. In the end, it seemed as though he was successful. After he returned to the Golden House, he went directly to the bed and covered himself with the quilt. He lay down and wanted to fall asleep immediately. Nevertheless, after a brief moment on the bed, a red snake sneaked out from the quilt and looked at him. The two of them stared at each other for a second. Kun Shui then pointed to the snake's head and said, "Shao Qi, although we have not been happy with each other because I had stewed your companion in the past, you don't have to hate me until now, right? I have saved you this time, otherwise, your skin would have been peeled off by Yun Yanli." Chapter 2548, Tomorrow will be a wonderful day. Shao Kai's body involuntarily trembled a little after listening to what Kun Shui had to say. The man let out a long sigh. "You silly master has come and look for you at the expense of troubling our future devil queen. You should go back now and tell your master that the jade statue has been securely hidden by Yun Yanli. I need more time to find it. However, be sure to tell them that they must be in the city tomorrow to save the jade statue. There is a bigger mastermind behind Yun Yanli that is coordinating everything with him through his dreams. Tomorrow, I will work with the forces from within." Kun Shui then noted his plans down on a small piece of paper and handed it over for Shao Qi to swallow it. Everything was well planned, and it all depended on their execution now. Kun Shui could not sleep from the anxiety, so he got up and circled the room a few rounds to kill time. Out of boredom, he touched every piece of furniture in the house as he walked from corner to corner. When he finally had the chance, he opened a gap in the wizardry barrier to release Shao Qi, while blocking the surveillance camera with his back. He had always been cautious and made no mistake with the procedure this time as well. Yun Yanli would not be able to suspect anything. Feeling more relaxed, he went straight to bed. It was yet another long day for Yun Yanli. At night, he sat in his own room and stared blankly at the images that were broadcasted from the crystal. The images were taken from inside the Golden House. Gu Shizhou seemed tired and was sleeping soundly on the bed. Yun Yanli felt that something was not quite right. At first, he always had the irresistible impulse to get sexually engaged with Gu Shizhou whenever he saw her, just like how a man would naturally feel about his beloved woman. The first thing he had always wanted was to make love to her. However, he stopped feeling that way since yesterday. He felt a strange feeling about everything. In fact, he somehow felt as though he had turned from a predator to a prey, as if one wrong move could get him into terrible danger. Was it because of the grudge in her eyes? Was it true that the best thing in his life would always be the one he could never have? Or had he stopped appreciating the woman because everything was too easy? He shook his head in an attempt to stop himself from overthinking and covered himself with a blanket to try to get some sleep. Tomorrow would be the big day. They were going to get married. He would make the most of their first night together, even if he had to force her. Tomorrow will be a wonderful day, he thought. Every bit of his plan was already in place. All he needed to do was to wait for his prey to emerge and surrender themselves. It was an unusually fine day. The dark clouds had cleared, leaving only some visible white mass floating in the bright sky. Meanwhile, the sun was partially hidden behind the clouds. It finally made its appearance after so long, gracing the land with its warm rays of sunshine. It had been a very long while since the people of the city last saw the sun. Astonishment aside, the people were actually glad for the sunny day. Needless to say, Yun Yanli took the opportunity to publicly announce that it was a very good sign for his wedding, that even the heavens were happy to bless his wedding. The wedding would be held at Jingde Square. It used to be a place where people gathered to practice martial arts. The square was paved with bluestones and equipped with several weapon racks. In preparation for the wedding, 2 stages were built with one side facing the south and the other facing the north. The 2 stages were only 50 feet away, but their decorations were totally different. The southern stage was made with purple sandalwood that actually looked more like a pavilion. It was further decorated with bright red ribbons that fluttered in the wind and some jade porch railings that shone with sparkling light under the sun. The stage was the place where Governor Yun would host the official ceremony. As for the northern stage, it was built from a kind of sandalwood that was enriched with 5 different elements. The stage itself was octagonal, where every point was placed with a big, bronze metal pot that carried different liquids of many colors. No one seemed to know about the liquids in the different pots. Chapter 2549, The Wedding. In the middle of the stage, there was another platform in the shape of a lotus flower that was supporting a big pillar made of burgundy wood material that glittered with dew. Other than the stages, the square itself was divided into 8 different regions, each separated with a layer of white curtains. Surely, these regions were allocated for the common people to witness the ceremony. Long before the start of the ceremony, the place was already thronged with excited people. Patrols were stationed to guide the people into different designated areas in an orderly fashion to avoid any accidents. The people were generally spiritual energy cultivators, so they lined up according to their element of practice, respectively. A huge crowd was expected to show up, as a lot of people would definitely come to witness the governor's big day. Additionally, Yun Yanli's men and their families already made up a huge sum. Therefore, the regions had to be built accordingly to accommodate an equal number of people in each tent, so the square would not be too crowded. Feng Ruhua and the rest of the guardians were among the crowd. Gu Shijiu had disguised them so they could keep a low profile among the people. Being more observant of her surroundings, Feng Ruhua had already noticed that many of Yun Yanli's men were secretly scattered among the general public. There were at least 70 men in her region of 4,000 common people. It looks like they were prepared for any possible intrusion from the Devil Kingdom. Feng Ruhua could not help but smile scornfully. Yun Yanli knew that the people from the Devil Kingdom would definitely show up to save the jade statue, so he must have multiple traps set up in the square. The traps that he made were powerful but were not hidden well enough to escape the eyes of Feng Ruhuo's third brother, Wan Hongxiu. Eventually, most of the traps were secretly destroyed. Collectively, the team was confident with their plan. Moreover, Gu Shijiu still had an ultimate killer move. Once triggered, Yun Yanli would definitely be thrown into confusion. As time passed by, the sun was slowly rising higher. It was also a second closer to the final countdown. The bustle was getting rowdier, waiting for the ceremony to start. Finally, an ensemble of gongs and drums could be heard from afar, accompanied by loud fireworks that slowly closed in. Amidst the sound of festivity, a group of people slowly approached the square. Feng Ruhua was not quite expecting the type of celebration. It really did look like a wedding. All the people watched the display as the parade arrived at the designated spot. Just like how people celebrated their weddings in the mortal world, the groom in fiery red robes was the unmistakable lead. There he was, riding a horse and guiding his men through the crowd. At the end of the parade, there would be a red wagon to take him away. Feng Ruhua heaved a sigh. She knew very well that the sedan cost a fortune just by the look of it. Yun Yanli seemed to care about Gu Shijiu, at least a little. She could not help but wonder how Kun Shui felt about the bridal sedan. Although Feng Ruhua was a woman, she certainly behaved rather manly. Kun Shui would often tease her and say that she was anything but a lady. In return, she would always make fun of Kun Zuyu's girly appearance and his lack of manliness. Although Kun Shui liked to flirt around, he did not particularly appreciate people saying that he looked like a woman. He would usually teach these people a lesson for making fun of his appearance. Nonetheless, he had to disguise himself as a beautiful woman today. Excited, Feng Ruhua was suddenly happy that she finally found something that she could mock Kun Shui with for a long while. She then took another look at the octagonal stage of elements. The stage looked like the place where Yun Yanli would place the jade statue. Chapter 2550, The Wedding. 2. Feng Ruhua and her alliance were experienced fighters who could recognize an array formation when they saw one, but there was not a thing that they knew about the stage or the danger it posed. Gently, she gave Shao Qi a rub on the head as a gesture of appreciation for delivering Kun Zuyu's message. From there, she learned that Yun Yanli's knowledge of how to destroy the jade statue came through his dream. In other words, the five-elemental stage was built from some kind of divine intervention. But what kind of power could it actually possess? The beating of gongs and drums resounded to the skies as the bridal sedan finally came to a stop about 100 feet away from the wedding stage. Yun Yanli got off from the horse and walked towards the sedan. Slowly, he pushed the red curtains aside and carried his bride out. The bride seemed to struggle a little as the scene carried out. It was apparent that she was seemingly reluctant. However, Yun Yanli did not intend to let her go. With a smile, he whispered into her ear, "Shijiu, I remember you saying that the men from your world would always carry their brides, from the sedan all the way into the hall. Today, I shall make your wish come true." He did not raise his voice, but it was loud enough for the people around to hear him. Some gasped in admiration by his sweet gesture. Others cheered for him. There were also some who did not care. All in all, the gesture had sparked some level of excitement in the crowd. The bride finally stopped struggling. Her head now rested perfectly on Yun Yanli's shoulder. He could clearly feel her warm breath on his neck every he exhaled. The more he thought about it, the more excited he got. Under the red bridal veil, Kun Shui was smiling in a contemptuous manner. He was proud of his unparalleled flirting skill. It would be even more exciting when Yun Yanli finally found out the truth. He would surely be disgusted by their sweet exchange. As such, Kun Shui allowed himself to be carried in Yun Yanli's arms from the sedan all the way to the wedding stage. However, they did not perform the formal bows right away. Instead, Yun Yanli put his bride down by the pillar and said cheerfully, "Shijiu, I have a show for you." He then turned his attention to the crowd and publicly announced, "Something strange has unfolded in Legua City not long ago. I believe all of you are aware of it." A jade statue appeared and claimed to be a celestial being. He has deluded the people with superstitions and false perceptions. Yun Yanli then briefly talked about the incident in Legua City and gave the credits of the disappearance of the blood rain to himself. Finally, he added, "I know that you will definitely have doubts about what I have recently achieved. After putting in a great amount of effort, I have finally caught the Devil King, who had disguised himself as a celestial being. He has tried to confuse you about what is right and what is wrong. My people, he has done so in order to destroy the order of society in the entire Shura world. Thank God for his mercy that I am finally able to capture him. Today, I will show you his true colors." His words had certainly aroused everyone's curiosity. They all looked at him intensely, waiting to see what he will unravel. Feng Ruhua and the rest were anxious, too, for they were finally about to see the jade statue of the Devil King. They started wondering where the statue could have been. Had Yun Yanli hidden the statue in his storage space? Under the sparkling eyes of anticipation, Yun Yanli started performing a spell. Many streaks of light then appeared from the tip of his finger and flashed towards the five-colored stage. Gradually, a jade statue slowly showed up. The statue was indeed made of jade, but the figure was too realistic. It was hardly any different from the man himself. The carvings were incredibly intricate. Feng Ruhua was breathless. The statue was really the Devil King himself. Although she had dedicated her service to Di Fui for almost 6 months, it was truly her first time to see him this way. Chapter 2551, The Wedding Scene. Di Fui had always worn his mask in the Devil Kingdom and had hardly removed it. Even Feng Ruhua had not got the chance to see his face before. The jade statue was so exquisite that she was charmed by its stunning features. She could not believe her eyes. The last time the jade statue was visible to a crowd, Gu Shizhou had lifted it in the air but shielded it with a thin mist of white clouds. Hence, part of its body was concealed, and people could not see its face very clearly. This was the first time that all of them could finally have a good look at the statue. Everyone was equally excited and felt as if its beauty had blessed their eyes. Yun Yanli was a considerably handsome man, however, his charm was incomparable to the celestial aura of this lifeless statue. The crowd thought to themselves, could the jade statue be the Devil King? They simply could not imagine meeting the man himself. How would they be able to handle his alluring beauty? Meanwhile, Kun Shui was wearing a bridal veil supported by a headpiece that was embellished with pearl fringes that were long enough to cover his face. Even though the crowd could not see his expression, they were still dazzled by his beauty. Fortunately, he could still see through the dangling pearl fringes and saw the statue displayed on the stage. His heart skipped a beat. The jade statue seemed a little different from the last time he saw it. In the past, the statue was surrounded by a layer of auspicious light that looked like a halo. Somehow, the halo had disappeared and was replaced by a faint glow of green, making it look rather gloomy. What had Yun Yanli done to the statue? Had he poisoned it? Kun Shui took another step forward to move closer to the statue in order to see it better, but Yun Yanli grasped him by the wrist. Yun Yanli did not exert too much force on him but pulled him hard enough to halt his steps. Patiently, Kun Shui tried to calm down to avoid causing a scene. Gu Shizhou had yet to signal him to act, so he had to stay calm for the time being. Shizhou, you have always hated anything related to the Devil Kingdom. Today is our big day, so I have arranged a show to entertain you. Yun Yanli slowly increased his grip on his bride-to-be's waist to the point where it became uncomfortable for Kun Shui. Kun Shui glared at Yun Yanli. He was worried about what the man would do. Yun Yanli was certainly worried that Gu Shizhou would cause a calamity during the wedding. Therefore, he had limited her movements by sealing her acupuncture points. He had even muted her, so she could not talk. Kun Shui disguised himself as Gu Shizhou to perfection. Every expression was on point, which made Yun Yanli very ecstatic. He signaled his men on the opposite stage, and the young palace master quickly swung into action. All of them performed a spell in unison and cast a few streaks of light in different colors. All of the strikes were aimed at the bronze pots. Bang! 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 All of a sudden, the liquid in the bronze pots were on fire. The flames were nothing like what they had seen before. The liquids were burning in 8 different colors: red, orange, yellow, turquoise, green, blue, purple, and white, each in its vivid tone. The flames reached at least a few feet into the sky, giving off lethal fumes that were glowing fiercely. The vigorous flames had also unleashed a pleasant, distinctive smell of some flowers, filling the air with a refreshing scent. It was a captivating sight accompanied by a delightful fragrance. The people started cheering loudly. Great one! What is that scent? It smells so good. Ah, the smell is so pleasant. I am completely in love. Intuitively, Feng Ruhua held her breath, knowing that something was not right. She never knew that the liquid in the metal pots was actually flammable. She was here in Jinda Square with Gu Shizhou last night and noticed that the bronze pots were empty. Obviously, they had only filled the pots today. What exactly were those liquids? How could all of them be of different colors yet carry the same distinctive scent? Chapter 2552, The Wedding Scene, 2, Kun Shui gasped in utter disbelief at the sight of the liquids. Although they were strange, the substances were not foreign to Kun Shui. He was able to recognize the liquids as soon as the fire started burning. The blood of the flood dragon. The blood of Tao Tai. The blood of Cheong Qi. The blood of Tao Wu. The blood of chaos. The blood of the heavens rending roar. The blood of Fei Fei. The blood of Bai Fong. The 8 different liquids were the blood of 8 different mythological, evil creatures. These evil creatures all possessed a very strong demonic aura, exerting a force so great that they could change the order of the world. Even their blood possessed a demonic aura. According to legend, burning the 8 types of blood together could ultimately release a scent that could destroy all kinds of wizardry barriers and contaminate even the purest form of celestial aura. Not even a mighty immortal could get away from it. He certainly did not expect Yun Yanli to have gathered all the types of blood here. How could he achieve such a feat? Was it even possible? All these evil creatures could not even be found in the Shura world. Perhaps, Yun Yanli was right about having someone behind him from in his dreams. Kun Shui took an anxious look at the jade statue that was tightly secured on the pillar. It was even harder for him to see whether the statue was authentic through the flames and fumes. The jade statue used to be invincible because of the protective wizardry barrier that it possessed. Unlike any other barriers, it could not be penetrated via ordinary methods. Kun Shui was able to stay calm because he knew that the jade statue was well protected by the strong wizardry barrier. Yun Yanli could not destroy it even if he tried. However, the situation was different now. Kun Shui could no longer keep his cool. He gazed into the distance to look for Gu Shijiu. He knew that she must be somewhere in the crowd, and he could not help but wonder why Gu Shijiu had not signaled anything yet. Before he could make up his mind on what to do next, a loud explosion from afar distracted him. Clouds of black smoke could be seen rising from the administrative center of Luohua City. The explosion was so loud that everyone could feel the ground shaking. In shock, the people followed the sound and peered at the explosion site. The governor's residence has exploded. A voice exclaimed. The dark clouds from the explosion had filled almost half of the sky. Dust and ashes from the shattered building still lingered in the air, forming a spectacular view of a rising mushroom cloud. It was really happening. The entire scene unfolded too suddenly, so the crowd began to panic. People started shoving one another in order to get out. In just a matter of seconds, the place had turned into chaos. Some people starting screaming, "What is happening? Why is the governor's residence on fire? Could it be that the people from the Devil Kingdom are here? Governor, you should go and have a look. Let us go and have a look." The heated discussions went on. These voices seemed to achieve their desired effect as they built suspense in the crowd. Convinced, the people from each tent started to move towards the exit as the square continued to lose its order. Kun Shui felt that hope had just returned. It looked like Gu Shijiu had succeeded. He moved a little but was immediately stopped by an arm that was wrapped around his waist. Yun Yanli whispered hoarsely into his ear, "Shijiu. Where do you think you are going?" He sounded rather callous. Kun Shui sighed. "Yun Yanli, your residence is burning down. Aren't you going to have a look?" Yun Yanli had momentarily deactivated the spell that he used to prevent Kun Shui from talking, which allowed him to respond. Certainly, his volume was still restricted. All he could do was speak softly, so other people could not hear what he said. Yun Yanli gave him a smile, but it was not genuine. He got even closer and said with a harsh tone, "The men from the Devil Kingdom must have caused it, right? Are they trying to use this distraction to save their master?" Kun Shui frowned at him. "So what? Your house should be the main concern. It is merely a building that is worthless to me." Chapter 2553, The Wedding Scene, 3, Yun Yanli stood his ground and had his arm tightly around Kun Zuyu's waist. "I do not care what happened over there. The wedding has to go on." All of a sudden, he raised his hand to release a display of fireworks in the sky. "Everyone stay calm. Stay where you are and don't move. If you move a little, you will get yourself killed." The young palace master could be heard making the announcement. "The governor has something to say." Her words were effective in keeping everyone still. Moreover, all the secret guards in different parts of the square were told to keep the scene orderly. The chaos subsided in a brief moment, and the crowd turned their attention to the jade statue again that was still engulfed in flames. Nothing seemed to have changed, however. The only noticeable difference was the increase in the number of guards equipped with shimmering armors that were fitted on their well-toned bodies. They stood in lines, surrounding both stages with the tightest security. No one could get close to the stage. Obviously, Yun Yanli had come prepared. Not even a minute had passed before the order was restored in the entire Zhengde square. Yun Yanli, whose arm was still clinging on to Kun Shui, swept his eyes across the people and said smilingly, "Do not panic. The residence was old and out of date. I have always wanted to destroy and rebuild it. Today is my wedding day, so I have to give my wife a new place to call home. Therefore, it was I who called for the explosion. Old things have to go to make space for new beginnings." The crowd could only gaze at one another in astonishment. They never thought that the governor would blow up his own place. They still found it quite hard to believe that he would do so himself. "You have blown up your own residence because of a wedding. What news, Governor?" Kun Shui mocked him. Even though he managed to turn the situation around, Yun Yanli was not very pleased about it. He had prepared his troops, for he knew that the people from the Devil Kingdom would definitely take the chance to create a scene. The man believed that the security measures he had put in place were strong enough to hold off an attack from 1,000 devil troops. To his surprise, someone was still able to sneak in and blow up the place. Who could possibly be so powerful? How could he or she sneak into his residence without triggering any alarm? There were many things that he kept in his place. Among those things were the rare magical items that had collected over the years. He was sure that whoever had broken in would seize his prized possessions. Never had he thought he would lose all of the items at once. The loss pained him, but he tried to keep a straight face. The fireworks were actually a sign for his guards to go and take a look at the explosion site. He took another look at Gu Shijiu and thought that she would definitely be the one blowing up his place if she had not been here, next to him. Suddenly, he thought of another possible culprit. Is it Kun Yunjian? Has the mudfish sneaked into my place? He could not think of anyone else, as the Kun was the only one who was capable of causing the destruction. Kun Shui squinted at him. How can a governor be so uninformed? He is a Kun, not a mudfish. However, he is not the one who broke into the place. Who is it, then? Try to guess. Yun Yanli smiled and said scornfully, I am not interested in making any guesses. I only want to carry on with the wedding. He threw a quick look to the north and added, right in front of him. If the jade statue were really Di Fui, he would not be pleased by what he was about to see. And, that was exactly what Yun Yanli wanted. Kun Shui looked at him casually and said, It is fine if you are not bothered by the loss of your house, but what about the star formation that is buried underneath it? Shouldn't you be worried that it will be exposed to the people? Chapter 2554, The Wedding Scene, 4. Yun Yanli did not appreciate the comment, but still smiled at Kun Shui and said, Silly girl, the star formation is buried deep in the ground. It cannot be destroyed or exposed so easily, even if the residence is gone. He was confident about his remark. The star formation in Legua City had been exposed because it was not hidden deep enough. However, the one in Luohua City was not the same. One would have to break through a series of array formations before reaching the core. It would certainly require a lot more explosives than what they had just witnessed. Although the explosion from before was quite massive, he assumed that only half a ton of explosives was used to cause the destruction. The amount was not enough to destroy the wall to the star formation. Furthermore, if the place were really destroyed, all the shatters and dust would tumble and bury the star formation even deeper. Hence, nothing would be revealed. Yun Yanli was fairly certain with himself until someone suddenly exclaimed, Hey, what is that shiny thing? Everyone turned and looked at the pointed direction, so did Yun Yanli. His heart sank as soon as he saw what it was. When the dust had settled, bright flashes of light could be seen, which looked like countless twinkling stars. It is the star formation. That really is the star formation. Some people from Legua City were able to recognize the pattern. Yes, it is the star formation. It seems to be consistently buried under the governor's residence. Let us have a look. The crowd began to move as they were obviously more interested in the star formation than the governor's wedding. They could not care less about the guards and immediately headed towards the governor's residence. There were more than tens of thousands of spectators but only 3,000 guards. There was nothing these guards could do. The wedding scene was about to get out of control. Yun Yanli started to panic. He heaved a loud sigh and signaled his men. The young palace master immediately released another display of fireworks in the sky to summon 4 other troops that came out from nowhere. Immediately, these troops had completely surrounded the square. All the exits had been blocked. The people were stopped by these black shadows and pushed back into the square. These 4 troops had a total of at least 10,000 soldiers. All of them were dressed entirely in black. Even their faces were covered in black, so no one knew how they actually looked like. However, their presence was intimidating enough. These men had surrounded the square securely like a metal wall so that no one could get past them. The men were complete strangers to the citizens of Luohua City. They had never encountered the dark troops, so they looked at one another confusedly, unsure of what Yun Yanli was about to do to them. "Governor Yun, what are you trying to do?" "Governor Yun, we are good citizens." All sorts of emotions started to surface in the crowd. Some were confused. Some were offended. Others were still in shock. Some brave ones called out and questioned his authority. Yun Yanli raised his hand and said, "Arrest them." These violent men in black rushed into the crowd and arrested those who made the most noise. The ones who were seized were securely tied and placed next to the stage. Yun Yanli's relentless arrest managed to scare off the rest of the people. Although they did not agree with his ways, no one dared to say another word to challenge him anymore. Yun Yanli looked at them icily and said, "These are only some tricks played by the people of the Devil Kingdom to get you confused. You need not care about what happened at the residence. When the ceremony is over, I shall take care of the Devil King's jade statue. By then, all these tricks will no longer happen. Time is ticking. Let us carry on with the ceremony now." Chapter 2555, The Wedding Crisis. Yun Yanli's men were already heading towards his residence to solve the mess. The star formation would be buried once again and kept away from the eyes of the general public. He signaled the master of ceremony to make the announcement. Now is a perfect time for the bride and groom to take the next step. Please come forward and take your vows. Yun Yanli forcibly turned Kun Shui around so that they would face each other. The master of the ceremony continued speaking to keep the ceremony going quickly and smoothly. First, bow to the creator of the universe. Second, bow to the master of heaven and earth. Third, bow to man and wife. The ceremony is now complete. The first announcement was confusing to the audience. Should the first bow be dedicated to heaven and earth? Who is the creator of the universe? The second bow was changed, too. Instead of dedicating the bow to their parents, it was dedicated to the creator of heaven and earth. Both the creator of the universe and the master of heaven and earth sounded mighty. No one had heard about either of the names before. Kun Shui was surprised, too, but Yun Yanli did not give him much time to think. He was forced to carry on with the ceremony. In the blink of an eye, the entire ceremony was done. It felt rather odd to everyone. As soon as the master of ceremony announced the completion of the ceremony, tremendous flashes of lightning suddenly filled the sky. The audience looked up and was shocked by the sudden change of weather. Rolls of dark, ominous clouds replaced the sunny, bright sky. It was an uncomfortable change. Was God against the newlyweds? Many questions surfaced, but none were answered. Kun Shui was quite sad as he had never thought that he would be married to Yun Yanli someday. It was the result of a series of unforeseen mistakes. Was God going to punish him for the mistake? Nonetheless, Feng Ruhua was delighted by Kun Zuy's misfortune. She barely had the chance to tease him with such an embarrassing topic, so she felt the need to enjoy the moment. On the other hand, Yun Yanli was really one of a kind. Under such intense circumstances, he still insisted on carrying out the ceremony. He must be really obsessed with the woman. Feng Ruhua and the rest of her alliance had certainly not expected that. Their initial plan was to let Gu Shizhou destroy the governor's residence and uncover the hidden star formation. They thought that Yun Yanli would put the star formation as his priority and delay the wedding. They predicted that he would rush to conceal the star formation to reassure the people that everything was fine. Meanwhile, they would take the opportunity to recover the statue. Initially, Feng Ruhua wanted to send a large troop into the city as a distraction but was stopped by Gu Shijiu. Gu Shijiu made it clear that Yun Yanli had put on a show to attract the people of the Devil Kingdom. If the troops really made their way into the city, it could easily be a one-way ticket for them as Yun Yanli would definitely seize them all. Therefore, they only sent 15 elites from the Devil Kingdom, each with extraordinary strength and abilities. These men were scattered among the crowd and patiently waited for the signal. When the tension slowly increased, they did not chime in too loudly. They only tried to trigger the people, especially the loud ones. Yun Yanli assumed that the people from the Devil Kingdom were going to create a state of confusion and disorder in Jingde Square, so he had arranged to have many of his men amongst the audience. To his dismay, none of these devil troops showed up even at the end of the ceremony. Instead, he had arrested many innocent people. Although some people from the audience were temporarily seized, they did not surrender. Curiously, they kept looking back at the governor's residence, which was now adorned with many glistening starlights. The more he resisted the public, the more suspicious they grew of him. Perhaps what the jade statue once said was true. Hence, many of them looked at the statue in anticipation. Their hearts sank as the flames continued to burn it. The flames from the 8 bronze pots were burning brighter and brighter. The 5-colored stone that was used to build the stage was lighted up as well. It seemed to be emphasizing the color red, which suggested that it was burning hot. Chapter 2556, The Wedding Crisis, 2. The stage had basically turned itself into a barbecue rack as the flames thoroughly burnt the statue. As it was no longer safe, the young palace master and her men quickly retreated. They had only stood around the stage before to keep people away from stealing the jade statue. Anxiously, Feng Ruhua kept her eyes on the jade statue with clenched fists. Was Gu Shijiu going to teleport to the stage and rescue the statue? If everything went as planned, she should be on the stage by now to seize the statue since the place was in chaos. Gu Shijiu had the invisibility spell with her, so no one could see her even if she stood on the stage. Due to that, Feng Ruhua could not even tell if she was already there because she would be invisible. Did she hurt herself when she blew up Yun Yanli's residence? The security should not have been very tight, right? Feng Ruhua had contacted Gu Shijiu earlier and was reassured that she was safe. She even said that she had already entered the star formation and was getting ready to plant the explosive. As soon as the place was destroyed, she promised to rejoin the rescue mission at Jingde Square. It would not take long for her to remove the statue from the pillar. However, a few moments had passed, and Kun Shui and Yun Yanli had even been married in the process. Yet, Gu Shijiu was still nowhere to be seen. Furthermore, the statue was still well secured on the stage. The flames were drawing closer to the center, and soon, the wooden pillar was up in flames. The pillar used to be burgundy in color. However, it soon turned lighter and lighter. After the ceremony had concluded, Yun Yanli did not guide his bride into their bridal chamber. Instead, he grasped her by the waist and stood by the railing. They watched as the fire blazed merrily. Utterly delighted, Yun Yanli asked in a cheerful tone, "Shijiu, do you know the nature of this fire?" Kun Shui answered firmly, "I do not. It is known as the fire of Fanfanye. Everything will be indiscriminately destroyed under the blaze. Even one's soul has no chance to escape from the fire. This is even more powerful than the fire of Hong Lianye. Can you see the pillar in the middle? It is made of dark Bodhi wood, which is specialized in trapping one's soul. Anyone who is tied at the pillar will be burnt into ashes, along with their souls. I do not know if the jade statue is actually Di Fui or not, but it does not matter. There is only one possible ending, which is that the statue will turn into a pile of ash." Kun Shui gasped in utter surprise. There was no time to waste. They could not watch as their master slowly died in the blaze. Someone had to retrieve the statue by force. He gave his finger a twitch to signal someone on the ground. Soon, a voice broke out from the tent, Yun Yanli has sacrificed millions of innocent souls to support the star formations. The formations are not intended to help the people. Instead, it is used to absorb the essence of heaven and earth. The purest source of spiritual power will then be used to cleanse the resentment and grudge of the dead, so he can utilize the power to carry out nefarious activities for his own benefit. The star formation is the birthplace of the blood bats. Yun Yanli is the evil that we should all be aware of, the one who puts his people's lives at stake. The jade statue is truly the celestial being who is here to save us all. The person who made the announcement was one of Tian Xiaoxia's puppets. No man was needed, so people could not tell where the voice was coming from. Chapter 2557, The Wedding Crisis. 3. Yun Yanli's men were good at tracking people and even sounds, but none of them could believe that someone actually had the guts to make such a treacherous and disrespectful remark. They failed to stop the announcement in time because as soon as they found the puppet, it had already conveyed the information. Everyone in the square had clearly heard it, and their blood boiled with indignation. Some could no longer be bothered about the soldiers and decided to march forward. Governor Yun, what do you have to say about this? What else can he say? He will surely deny it. He must be guilty, that is why he had to stop us from entering his residence. I do not care. I must get the celestial jade statue away from the fire. Put out the fire. Put it out. The disturbance soared. The crowd quickly became unruly as tension continued to build. The words had utterly stirred people's dissatisfaction with Yun Yanli. Many figures flashed by in the air, attempting to save the jade statue. Some rushed towards the stage where Yun Yanli stood and demanded a proper explanation while trying to stop him from harming the statue. Others were trying to resist the guards. The place was about to lose control. Suddenly, a man ran toward the crowd. It was one of Yun Yanli's men who had to make an urgent report. Governor, this is bad. The city gate has been breached. Many wild beasts have come into the city. The ground began to tremor as if 10,000 horses were galloping toward the square. Obviously, the beasts had come in a massive pack. From what they could observe, these animals were charging towards the square. Many of the citizens naturally started to run. It was utter chaos. But where was Gu Shijiu, anyway? She was actually standing among the crowd, at a place where she could easily see the entire situation. However, she was not alone. Someone had taken control of her. Clearly, she could see everything that was happening. It all went well at first. Gu Shijiu managed to destroy Yun Yanli's residence to expose the star formation that he had been hiding underground, but before she could make it to Zhengde Square, a man suddenly appeared and got in her way. The man was wearing robes of emerald bamboo embroideries. A piece of cloth had concealed the left side of his handsome face, revealing only his eye. With a smile, he raised his arm and secured Gu Shijiu at the shoulder. Master Shijiu, where do you think you are going? The man was none other than Zhu Duqing, her new apprentice. He was holding onto her shoulder very tightly, so inundating that she could feel her legs go weak. She tried to stand back and keep a distance from him, but he grasped her at the waist too and pulled her into his arms. Astonished, Gu Zijia's heart sank at the sudden realization. Zhu Duqing's kung fu was not like before. His strength had increased tremendously. His spiritual level was at least a mighty immortal. By revealing his actual strength, it was clear that he did not intend to play his pretentious self any longer. Gu Shijiu was trying to play dumb. Zhu Duqing, what are you doing? It is great to see that you have escaped. I have been trying to save you. However, with a tight smile, he heaved a helpless sigh. Shijiu, why do you have to pretend? You no longer trust me, right? Why would you save me? No matter how bad my situation is, you will never help me out. Why shouldn't I trust you? I do not understand. It must be a misunderstanding, but this is not the right time to discuss it. I need to do something urgently. We will talk about this later. Gu Shijiu did not want him to lose control, so she tried to talk him out of it while attempting to escape. Chapter 2558, the wedding crisis. 4. Zhu Duqing sighed softly. Are you thinking of rescuing Di Fui? Fine, I'll help you. After hearing that, Gu Shijiu seemed to have blacked out momentarily. When she regained consciousness, she found herself inside a tent at the crowded Jinda Square. She tried to speak but found that her voice was as soft as the sound of insects. This was in stark contrast to the extremely noisy surrounding. Zhu Duqing had sealed her acupoint and also disguised both of them. They now looked like an ordinary couple. Later, they headed out, and Gu Shijiu managed to see everything that happened on the two towers. She saw that Yun Yanli and Kun Shui had completed their wedding rituals. She also saw the jade statue burning fiercely on the other side of the square. Shijiu, is that Kun Shui who was just married to Yun Yanli? I cannot believe that he does not even know it is not you. I thought he loved you so badly. Apparently, he is dumb. Shijiu, do you know the nature of the fire? It is the fire of Fanfanya. Zhu Duqing explained the power of the flame and concluded with a soft tone, I am the one who taught Yun Yanli this spell. I gave him the blood he needed, the 5 colored stones, and even the necessary wood. Sigh, I have put in so much effort to make his dream come true. Disappointedly, he trapped me in a prison and wanted to kill me. Zhu Duqing, why are you doing all this? Hopelessly, Gu Shijiu asked as she gritted her teeth. For him. Zhu Duqing pointed at the jade statue on the tower. He then sighed. Today is the day. What has happened between the two of you? You would not know the enmity between us. You do not have to know. You just need to know that only one of us can survive. Are you a member of the Yun family? That was the only clue Gu Shijiu had. The Yun family is nothing. I have nothing to do with them. Zhu Duqing drew closer to Gu Shijiu. He was so close that his lips almost touched her ear. They are too low a class of people even to polish my shoes. Gu Shijiu finally understood that Zhu Duqing was the main culprit behind the chaos in the Shura world. He finally revealed himself. Unfortunately, it was in such an intricate situation. Gu Shijiu could only watch helplessly as the flames engulfed the jade statue. She had no way to escape. Nonetheless, she did notice that Kun Shui had signaled his peers to take action. The beacon was lighted as a sign for the soldiers outside the city wall to send in the ferocious beasts. Besides that, she also heard Tian Xiuxiu use the puppets to urge the crowds to foil Yun Yanli's plan. The place was undoubtedly in a state of chaos. Zhu Duqing sighed as he shook his head. They are all dumb *Cs. It is impossible to put out the fire, it will burn everything into ashes. They are merely killing themselves. TSK. What a tragedy. Gu Shijiu was generally a calm person. However, she was lost now. Her eyes started to turn red. She had no idea what she could do, and it seemed that she could not save him. In fact, she had even gotten his loyal subordinates into trouble. In a last attempt to save her friends, she struggled out of Zhu Duqing's embrace and shouted with all of her energy, No. Stop. Please stop. Please. Come back. Stop running. It's a trap. Come back, please. Her voice was extremely soft, even though she had consumed every bit of her energy. No one heard her. The only thing she could do was to watch them run into the burning flame. Crack. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning struck the burning tower. The thunder was loud enough to impair everyone's ears. Meanwhile, the people had rushed into the burning tower has been pushed back by a powerful force that felt as though they had crashed into a wizardry barrier. Everyone was shocked. What was happening? Look! Someone shouted as he pointed at the sky. The crowd quickly lifted their heads and immediately took a deep breath. Gosh! What was that? No one had realized that plenty of light purple clouds had completely covered the sky. It seemed that a terrifying storm was approaching. Those with low spiritual power were trembling, and some even slumped to the ground. It was a catastrophe. Someone in the crowd would be experiencing a catastrophe. However, the strange thing was that the ominous clouds were usually red or black. No one has seen purple ones. These clouds seemed to glow in 7 colors. Certainly, none of the people here had seen it before. Those who had were wondering who the challenge was for. The jade. It is a holy statue. Someone shouted. Gosh! It is a holy statue. It is going through the catastrophe. Swiftly, another bolt of lightning struck the tower, and the burning platform collapsed. Then, a white shadow was engulfed by the lightning and slowly rose up to the sky. The crowd watched in awe as the jade statue began to float in midair as it glowed. At the same time, numerous bolts of lightning struck the jade statue. Everyone watched silently as the statue glowed in 7 colors. Gu Shijiu also held her breath as she fixed her eyes on the jade statue and watched it experience 49 strikes of lightning. All of a sudden, the jade statue slowly opened its eyes and got up. The jade statue was alive. It seemed to have turned into a man with a white robe right in front of 1,000 pairs of eyes. The silky, snowy white robe with embroidery designs was fluttering in the clouds. Meanwhile, the man's hair was like a waterfall flowing at his back. Everyone was amazed as he stood on a cloud with 7 colored glows. He looked to the ground as though he was a holy lord. Furthermore, his strong aura made the people around him kneel to worship him. Even Yun Yanli's soldiers had kneeled. Gu Shijiu almost stopped breathing because of what she had seen. She was certain that the man was Di Fui. However, his aura was so much stronger than she remembered. Suddenly, she felt a crack in her head as a plethora of memories rushed into her mind. Chapter 2559, Surprisingly, he had become a great deity. Please excuse me, my celestial brother. With your beautiful appearance, you will look just as charming even if you are naked. I need to borrow all of your clothes from you. Please consider this as an act of kindness for a random stranger. The marriage has been arranged between your mother and I. No one else should know about it. Are you happy to have me as your fiancé? You once said that rings were necessary as a sign of love between a man and a woman. When the woman agreed to be with the man, she would accept his ring. This ring is a perfect fit, made especially for you. You have not taken it off, which means you have agreed to marry me, haven't you? I do care, Celestial Master Zhua. I only want to be with you until the end of time. Just the two of us against the world. These images flashed by like movie scenes in her mind, overwhelming her with the acute nostalgia of their sweet past. They had been through the test of time. There were times of argument, of affection, of pain, and last but not least, of everlasting love. But everything was erased from her memory. Nonetheless, the pain of losing him had never been forgotten. She still remembered going through the distraught of trying not to forget him. She had even carved their vows everywhere as an everlasting reminder of how much she loved him. The name that he had always been using was Di Fui. Huang Tu was the name he used after becoming the Lord. He had used many identities, Di Fui, Celestial Master Zhua, Huang Tu, the Lord, and, most recently, Xin Nianma. All these names belonged to the same man. It had always been him. Through a series of flashbacks, she became more and more overwhelmed with a mixture of feelings. She stood gazing at him blankly as he levitated in the air. Should she rejoice in his rebirth? Did her loss in the past greatly sadden her? She was too emotional to tell how she actually felt. She looked at him fixedly without even blinking, as she was afraid that he might disappear again in just a blink of an eye. She wanted to take another step closer to him but was stopped by Zhu Duqing. He needed to make sure that she stayed by his side. The corners of his mouth turned up, seemingly smiling, but contemptuously. The man had never expected Di Fui to make it through the barriers and wake up just in time. After the catastrophe, he had managed to reach a higher level. Surprisingly, he had become a great deity. The man had bypassed becoming a mighty immortal and went from being a golden immortal to a great deity. How did he do that? To be safe, Zhu Duqing quietly retreated with Gu Shijiu. Using the facial disguise technique, they looked no different than ordinary people. The way he seized Gu Shijiu in his arms was rather unique. Gu Shijiu did not look like she had been abducted. Instead, she looked like she had willingly submitted herself to her husband. People would immediately assume that they were just a loving couple from the way they embraced one another. Nothing looked suspicious. Gu Shijiu started to panic. She certainly did not want to leave. They had yet to be united even though she had been anxiously taking care of his jade statue for so long. And now that he was finally awake, she was forced to leave. She had no other choice. Her strength was obviously not a match for Zhu Duqing. Also, the man knew her kung fu moves by heart. With barely any strength left, she could not run even if she wanted to. She wobbled with uncertainty during the first few steps as she slowly moved farther and farther away from the man she loved. Out of every person in the square, Yun Yanli was the most surprised one. He never thought that his careful plan would fail. On quite the contrary, he had even contributed to the man's powerful return. All of his efforts were in vain. He was disappointed by the outcome but was not entirely despaired. Chapter 2560, I meant my words. Literally as a matter of fact, Yun Yanli thought that he was already married to Gu Shijiu. Since they had exchanged their vows during the official ceremony, she was now considered his legal wife. Therefore, her past with Di Fui did not matter anymore. So what if Di Fui had come back? It was all too late. Moreover, Yun Yanli was undoubtedly powerful. With the help of his loyal troops, he could easily outnumber the few soldiers that Di Fui had at his disposal. He was certainly not afraid. Yun Yanli had waited for ages to destroy Di Fui. Hence, he looked forward to a fight. Tightly, he held Kun Ziyu's hand tightly and looked confidently at the glorious, radiant man in the sky. Di Fui looked down, and their eyes met. Yun Yanli was overwhelmed by a sense of tremendous pressure as soon as he caught the icy look in Di Fui's eyes. Di Fui's assertion of authority was, without a doubt, intimidating. Yun Yanli was obviously frightened, for the man's aura was much too strong. However, Yun Yanli did not surrender to his fear. He openly challenged Di Fui and said, "Di Fui, I did not think that the jade statue was really you. Did you come back just in time to be part of our wedding ceremony? Are you here to join the celebrations?" He said it deliberately to provoke Di Fui. The audience remained quiet. Many of them knew about the relationship between Di Fui and Gu Shijiu. Some were aware of their love story. They assumed that the Devil King would be offended by the aggressive hue and proceed to take the bride away. Kun Shui was lost in awe at Di Fui's powerful comeback when Yun Yanli suddenly made the sarcastic remarks. This suddenly reminded him that he was still disguised as Gu Shijiu. He wanted to change his appearance but decided to be patient. Fixedly, he looked at Di Fui in bewilderment and started wondering when the man would come and save him. Di Fui studied Kun Shui and remained expressionless. "Does your marriage have anything to do with me?" he casually asked. His voice was loud and clear, reverberating around the hills. The reply, however, had come as a shock to everyone, including Kun Shui. He blinked his eyes at the man in disbelief, trying to make sense of the situation and check if his master had lost all of his memory. Even Zhu Duqing was shocked. He stopped to look up at the man in the air and smiled at the ludicrous response. It would be fun, he thought, if Di Fui had lost all of his memory. He then looked at Gu Shijiu, who was standing by his side. He could not read her expression under the disguise, but surely, she must be looking pale as a sheet. "What did you mean?" Yun Yanli certainly felt bitter as he had wanted to rub this fact into Di Fui's face. "I meant my words, literally," Di Fui responded nonchalantly. "Don't you care about her anymore? Didn't you think that you were going to marry her someday?" Yun Yanli pulled Kun Shui even closer to him as if boasting his authority over his newly wedded wife. His reply had an aggressive tone attached to it, but Di Fui was not bothered at all. "Congratulations. I have never thought so." Yun Yanli was shocked. It would seem that Di Fui had indeed lost all of his memory. He did not seem to care about Gu Shizhou anymore. Yun Yanli laughed out loud at the reply he received. Good to know. He then planted a soft kiss on Kun Zuy's supple cheek. Kun Shui was utterly surprised by the kiss. It would appear that the man would always take advantage of the opportunities he had. Chapter 2561, I was your sweetheart. Just then Kun Shui was looking at Di Fui, hoping that he would get him out of this mess. The sudden kiss had got to him, but he was unsure of what to do. All of a sudden, Di Fui suddenly turned away. He looked to the north and seemed to throw his sleeves in that direction. The sleeves traveled at lightning speed, and, in the blink of an eye, they had found and secured a person amongst the crowd. Everything happened so quickly that no one knew what was going on. Before everyone got a grasp of the situation, everything had already settled down for Di Fui. There was a person who appeared by his side. As soon as the crowd saw the person's face, they all gasped in astonishment at the rare sight. She was a middle-aged woman with absolutely nothing special about her appearance. She was wearing the most ordinary set of clothes and would be easily overlooked in a crowd. The spectacular man in white, however, was hugging the woman so tightly as if he had just found the most precious item on earth. Had Di Fui gone mad? He left his beloved woman alone in the arms of another man and embraced what looked to be another man's wife instead. Let go of my wife. A man could be seen rushing out from the crowd, bursting with anger. Di Fui did not pay any attention to him. His eyes were solely locked on the face of the woman in his arms. Gently, he caressed her face and said softly, "Baby, you have lost some weight." The comment got the crowd going crazy. Kun Shui was shocked, and so was Yun Yanli. Speechless, Zhu Duqing stood unmoving. Tears could be seen rolling in the woman's eyes, but she resisted the urge to cry and returned his gaze with a smile. You are finally here. Do you know how long I have been waiting for you? Overwhelmed, she tried to hold back the tears. I am sorry, Di Fui apologized while planting a soft kiss on her forehead. For all those years that you have spent, waiting for my return. The woman was caught off guard by his response. She stared at him in utter disbelief. You have, she said with a quavering voice. He seemed to have brought up the years that she had spent waiting for him. Did he remember everything? Could this really be? The surprise had come too soon. She could not believe that it was finally happening. With a smile, he heaved a sigh out of nostalgic sentiment. Baby, how are Mu Feng, Mu Yun, and the rest of them doing? Gu Shizhou had no doubts now that Di Fui remembered everything. He finally recalled his past as Huang Tuesday. They are doing fine. Just like me, they have, all forgotten about you. She spoke with involuntary pauses. Her tearful eyes kindled with excitement. It does not matter. When everything here is done, I will visit them in the lower bound, with you, and make sure that they remember me. They have always been my loyal companions, after all. When I was immortalized, they were completely heartbroken. If they really cannot recall anything about me, I will be sure to leave them with an unforgettable impression next time. All right. We will do as you say. At this point, everyone could already tell that something was not quite right. Intuitively, they turned to Yun Yanli for an answer. Yun Yanli was shocked, too. He looked at the couple that was levitating in the air. The two lovebirds were obviously indulging in their sweet, private moment. Then, he turned to the timid, lovable woman by his side and gritted his teeth. Who are you? Kun Shui was overwhelmed with amusement. He blinked at him and said, try to guess. Yun Yanli's face turned white instantly. With a push, he called him out, Kun Yunzhan. Get away from me. Kun Shui staggered to his feet, swaying a little before deliberately trampling on Yun Yanli's foot. You are such a bad boy. I was your sweetheart just then. You have even made me marry you. How can you just turn around and push me away? Chapter 2562, Untitled. Yun Yanli's expression portrayed a bitter resentment toward Kun Shui. Moreover, he could not understand how Gu Shizhou had got away when everything was so well secured. How did the beautiful woman turn into this hideous creature? His wizardry barrier had been working just fine, and he had never stopped checking the surveillance all this while. When and how did the switch happen? He was absolutely dumbfounded by the fact that he had been married to a man. Yun Yanli was all choked up in utter disbelief. He could not help but slap the man. Disgusting ladyboy. Go to hell. Kun Shui was prepared for it. He let the impact guide him away from the man and even waved flirtatiously in the air before making a perfect landing on the ground. First thing first, he adjusted his robes before looking at Yun Yanli with disappointment. Although I do not like you as much as you like me, we are married, so I might as well consider you as my partner now. How can you rush into murdering your own man? God will punish you for the sin. He was delighted, very delighted. He had disguised as Gu Shijiu for far too long. It was certainly a difficult journey for him. Finally, he was able to be himself again. Meanwhile, Yun Yanli could not believe that Gu Shijiu could still trick him while being trapped in the Golden House. He certainly had not anticipated her escape. He had always thought that her acupuncture points were sealed, so he never checked. He did not realize that Kun Shui also had the ability to change the positions of his acupuncture points, which made all of his spells redundant. Kun Shui had actually never lost his kung fu. He had always been acting so that his mission could be accomplished. The real Gu Shijiu had finally shown up, along with his master. Everything turned out to be incredibly perfect. Kun Shui no longer wanted to endure the embarrassment. As soon as everything was exposed, he quickly returned to his handsome, stylish self. He immediately rejoined the group with Feng Ruhua, knowing very well that he would be no match to Yun Yanli if they were to fight on the stage. Infuriated, Yun Yanli wanted to kill him so badly. He would not let the man flee so easily. He reached out his hand and cast a streak of blinding red light that was aimed directly at Kun Zuyu's neck. The streak of light was as sharp as a blade, whistling through the air with tremendous strength and speed. Without a doubt, a single hit would immediately cost one's life. The strength was capable of splitting through even the strongest form of metal armor. It was coming at Kun Shui, forcefully and rapidly. Even his exceptional agility would not be able to save him this time. He panicked and assumed that he would definitely get hit. Then, things got a twist when an arm reached out and caught the streak of red light. The light could be seen struggling in the mysterious hand, but could not break free. Kun Shui immediately leaped back to avoid getting hit. Master! He called out loud. The one who had controlled the red light was Di Fui. He had one hand on Gu Zijia's waist and held the light with his other hand. Bewildered, Yun Yanli never thought that Di Fui had the ability to stop the blade with his bare hand. Not even the great deities from the upper bound could do the same. Moreover, Di Fui's kung fu had just recovered. How could he be so at ease with the deadly blade? He was holding the streak of red light so casually as if it was nothing alarming. How much kung fu had this man recovered? Yun Yanli, you should be fighting me, Di Fui casually said with a smile. Gracefully, he behaved like the perfect gentleman. However, his aura was not to be underestimated. Yun Yanli took a step back but was still determined to argue, Di Fui, stay where you are. If you dare, fight me like a real man, this time. Chapter 2563, The Battle. Yun Yanli's kung fu was at the level of a great deity. In order to test out his strength, he once snuck into heaven and challenged the great deities anonymously. He had faced all of them, except Shinjiuli, Ning Sueno, and the current Emperor Immortal. The result was satisfactory to him as he had defeated all of the ones he challenged. No one was able to beat him, not even the lords who had ascended from the earth. Back then, he was worried that his cover might be blown, so every ambush was a quick one. He attacked, he fought, he won, and he left. As for those great deities who had unfortunately been defeated, they were too embarrassed to admit defeat and decided not to mention a word about the incident. Therefore, Yun Yanli was never quite fully satisfied with his victories, as no one knew who the mysterious man actually was. For the first time, he finally had the ability to show his true power in front of his people and his beloved woman. If he could beat Di Fui, the audience around him would certainly recognize his victory. Yun Yanli knew nothing about Di Fui's past on Earth. He would not care even if he did. How powerful could a lord from the earth possibly be? He had defeated quite a number of lords before. Moreover, Di Fui had just been through the catastrophe and advanced to the level of a great deity. Yun Yanli also assumed that a child like Di Fui would not have the strength to fight him, even if his spiritual power had increased. It was the perfect chance for him to defeat Di Fui if he were ever to do it. He looked at Di Fui fixedly and scornfully said, "I challenge you to a fight." No one is allowed to leave until someone is victorious. Anyone who runs will be forever labeled as a coward. He was not too worried about settling Di Fui. In fact, he was more concerned that Gu Shijiu would teleport and save him at a critical time. Therefore, he wanted to make his point absolutely clear. Frowningly, she stared at Di Fui. She was never worried about his strength. What she was worried about was his health. After all, he had just survived a catastrophe, so he was probably still weak. It would be a disadvantage for him to fight at this very moment. However, before she even voiced out her concern, Di Fui was already reassuring her, "Baby, what do you want me to do with him? Should I kill him right away or make him crippled?" Surprised, Gu Shijiu looked at him with admiration. Their eyes met, and with one look, Gu Shijiu could immediately tell that he aimed to win the fight. She was slightly relieved. "Celestial Master Zhua, do as you wish." "I have no preference," she said with a sweet smile. She called him by his name in the past, and Di Fui liked it very much. He proceeded to kiss her forehead. "All right. Stay here. I shall make him pay for what he did to you." He then gave her a packet of dried fruits as a snack. "These fruits taste quite nice. You will like it. Try. Snack a little while you watch the fight." "Great." Gu Shijiu took the packet of dried fruits and stood back. Di Fui flicked his sleeves, as a sign of him getting ready to fight. He threw a stern look at Yun Yanli and said, "Yun Yanli, your father had misused his authority, which ended up in him being defeated. However, his children should never be burdened by his sin. If you chose to cultivate in a proper way, you would always have been welcome into heaven. You should never have used this selfish and evil way of cultivation, which sacrificed millions of lives for the sake of your success. I am taking this matter into my own hands and will restore the peace here." He did not speak loudly, but everyone in the square had heard him. The people were astonished. They had only recently suspected that the disasters in the Shura world must have something to do with the star formation. Chapter 2564, The Battle, 2. Before Di Fui continued, Kun Shui quickly added, "The star formation is clearly the root cause behind all the chaos in the Shura world. The blood bats, the rain of blood, as well as the madness experienced by the creatures in the wild, were caused by the star formation. Our master has thoroughly investigated the star formation in Lagua City, and you can obviously see the result after it was reconfigured. The one in this city has just been exposed. You will understand when you see it." The audience stood frozen as they tried to connect the dots. Yun Yanli had been behaving rather oddly today, so they were quite convinced by what Kun Shui had just said. Many were very interested in having a look at the star formation. After all, their fates were closely tied to this magical mechanism. Obviously, they were also interested in the battle that was about to unfold between the two great fighters in front of them. The chance of witnessing a great battle was hard to come by. Since the star formation had already been revealed, the crowd guessed that they would get the opportunity to see it later. Therefore, the epic battle should be their priority at the moment. So, everyone decided to stay still until it began. The young palace master suddenly interrupted contemptuously, "The star formation used to work just fine. My master had spent a great amount of effort and time to keep it going so that his people can have a peaceful time here. However, these people from the Devil Kingdom have completely twisted his good intention to jeopardize his reputation. The star formation in Lagua City has been manipulated. No one knows if the one we have here has been manipulated as well. Perhaps they have summoned the dead to fill the formation with malice and resentment in order to create a wicked effect. The young palace master expressed her point of view, articulately. Everything that she said was false, but she made it sound believable. Some of the people in the crowd were convinced. In fact, if Yun Yanli had not stopped them from going to see the star formation earlier, they would have totally believed what the young palace master had just said. Nonetheless, things were different now. Who do you believe in? Di Fui asked with a smile while looking at the crowd for an answer. The people answered in unison, "We believe in you." Embarrassed, Yun Yanli stood there quietly. On the other hand, the young palace master was annoyed. What a bunch of fools. Unbelievable. Some people could no longer suppress their anger and started protesting. If you are not guilty, why did you stop us from going to the other cities to check their star formation? After what happened in Legua City, the only thing you tried to do was to conceal the news. You even arrested so many talented people who only wanted to find out the truth behind the formations and killed them by convicting them of treason. How many of them have you killed? I am sure you know the number. You tried to keep the truth away from us, but the more you tried, the more obvious it became. We had become suspicious of you a long time ago. Do you really think that we are fools? When one man rose in opposition, others felt brave enough to follow suit. All of them had enough of the mess. Finally, they had the chance to voice out how they felt. Being an arrogant person, the young palace master could not deal with it when someone challenged her authority. Impulsively, she wanted to whip the first man who challenged them. She withdrew her whip and used almost all of her spiritual power to launch an attack at him. Obviously, she wanted him dead. However, before she could reach the man, a sword swung by and knocked her whip away. Gu Qing, have you decided to join the rebels? The young palace master was furious. The one who stopped her was one of her closest followers. He was also a man who was born and raised in the Shura world. The people of the Shura world deserve to know the truth, Gu Qing said with his teeth gritted. Chapter 2565, The Battle, 3, That is right, we want the truth. We do not want our people to be used and exploited. True. We only showed our loyalty to the governor because we thought he was the savior of the Shura world. However, it seems he does not really want to help us. The people you have asked us to kill are not the people from the Devil Kingdom. Instead, they are ours. Some brave ones chimed in. All of them had been through a lot. Soon, more than half of Yun Yanli's troops had been divided. More and more became dissatisfied and slowly joined the resistance. Many of them were the elites from some of the local clans in the Shura world. The catastrophic events in the Shura world had caused many of them to lose their loved ones. Some had even watched as their entire family or clan died before their eyes. They really wanted to know the truth behind all the chaos. The truth was clear enough for everyone to see. Those who accepted it would no longer follow Yun Yanli. No matter how persuasive the young palace master was, the situation was now beyond repair. These men were supposed to be in the front line to take down Feng Ruhua and her men. Instead, they had switched sides at this critical moment. Yun Yanli's face was as pale as a sheet. He had worked so hard to build his reputation here over many years. Now, everything took a swift turn, and all of his efforts were in vain. He certainly had not expected Di Fui to be the one to foil his plans. Nonetheless, he knew that all the trust that the people had for him was gone in an instant. He was furious, but he was still adamant about taking down Di Fui and his men. After all, the Shura world was only a piece of land for him to cultivate. He did not intend to rule the place. Moreover, he was almost done with his practice so he could leave any time he wanted. He still had faith in the soldiers in black that came to his aid at the last minute. Those were the ones that would be helpful to him at this moment. He was confident that they would never betray him under any circumstance. He had trained the soldiers using a special method that he learned from the prophecies. No matter what he chose to do, they would never think twice and do exactly as told, even if he asked them to sacrifice their lives. Despite the revelations that had just taken place, they did not join the resistance. Fortunately for Yun Yanli, these men possessed a high level of spiritual power and expertise in kung fu. All of them were golden immortals, and each of them could easily fight off 100 or even 1,000 common people. Scornfully, Yun Yanli threw an icy look at those who decided to rebel against him. Dark Imperial Guards, take down the rebel forces immediately, he commanded. Yes. All of the armed men in black answered in unison. Their swords were quickly drawn and aimed directly at those who rebelled against Yun Yanli. Gu Shijiu thought that she would witness the battle between Di Fui and Yun Yanli before anything else happened. It was out of her expectations for Yun Yanli's own people to turn against him. Although these armed men in black all had their faces covered, Gu Shijiu could still tell that these men were locals from the Shura world. Logically speaking, they should be conscious enough to know that they should not be working for Yun Yanli. Therefore, Gu Shijiu predicted that they had either been brainwashed or under Yun Yanli's control. With this knowledge, she quickly leaped forward and grabbed one of the armed men. She needed to read his pulse to know what was really going on. Her actions were so quick that the man had not even got the chance to see what was happening. Instantly, Gu Shijiu was already sure that something was not quite right about the man. They are being controlled, Gu Shijiu suddenly announced. She looked at Yun Yanli sternly as she added, Yun Yanli, you have drugged them. Yun Yanli replied sarcastically, what nonsense. I have fed them with some pills, but the pills were meant to help them improve their spiritual power, not control them. Chapter 2566, The Battle, 4. Yun Yanli then turned to the armed men and asked for their opinion, what do you think? Are you under anyone's control? No. The Dark Imperial Guards reassured. Are you conscious? Yun Yanli continued to question them. Absolutely. We know what we are doing. We are not under anyone's control. What we have for the governor is our loyalty. The armed men no longer answered with brief replies. They all chimed in and claimed that they knew exactly what they were asked to do. Yun Yanli seemed relieved by the men's reassurances. Bitterly, he looked at Gu Shijiu with a sense of hatred as he added, Gu Shijiu, everything I have done was for you, and yet, you disregard it all. Today, you even chose to stand by the Devil King and even made a false accusation against me. He was, indeed, feeling a little wronged. Apparently, he had not brainwashed the Dark Imperial Guards. He only gave them a type of pill that he had made using a method taught to him by the mysterious voice in his dreams, claiming that the pills could help to strengthen the soldiers. Their power would be greatly increased, but the advancement did come at a price. Some of these people would gradually lose their emotions and slowly become cold-blooded. Generally, it was something beneficial for Yun Yanli. He did not harm these men, nor did he intend to control them. Therefore, he was able to explain himself confidently. So, are you saying that you did not control them? Gu Shijiu asked sarcastically. All of a sudden, she took out her lute and started playing it. The crowd was generally unaffected, but the black troops all responded in terror. Gu Shijiu did not say anything but continued playing her instrument. She had played a melodious piece which the audience found to be pleasant. In stark contrast, the black troops all behaved as if some lethal voodoo had cursed them. Soon, all of them started trembling and spitting out blood. In the pool of dark purple blood, numerous bugs could be seen crawling about. It was a disgusting sight. The crowd was shocked. They soon noticed that the men were no longer shrieking, and the colors slowly returned to their pale complexions. All of them stood gazing at one another in utter amazement. They knew that Yun Yanli was wrong, but still, they acted according to Yun Yanli's command regardless. Perhaps, they would even kill their own parents and think they were doing the right thing with a false sense of righteousness. Now that they regained their consciousness, they felt foolish for their earlier responses. They looked at the crawling bugs in the pool of blood and started wondering what the creatures actually were. Gu Shijiu explained, these are from the dark obedience venom. If you keep taking it over a long period, you will lose your sense of emotion and be at your master's disposal. The Dark Imperial Guards were stunned. At this point, they were conscious and finally able to think straight. Without hesitation, they chose to join the rebellion as well. In the past, they were Yun Yanli's most trusted men, so they were the ones who carried out the dirtiest, most secretive missions. For example, Yun Yanli had asked them to do some of the most ruthless things, such as arresting those who challenged Yun Yanli's authority. They were also summoned to kill the common people in the most violent ways possible. Their spirits would then be tied to a spiritual stone and used as an element to support the star formation by channeling a continuous flow of resentment and dark energy. As soon as the truth was revealed, everyone gasped in horror. People were indignant at Yun Yanli's cruelty. Many were outraged and eagerly wanted to get revenge for their loved ones. Finally, Yun Yanli conceded that it was the end of his reign in the Shura world. Nothing could ever save him from the plunge he was experiencing. Chapter 2567, The Culprit. Not too long ago, Yun Yanli was surrounded by his people who worshipped him and regarded him as their savior. He was a man who could be proud of his status and what he had achieved in such a short period. But now, in less than 15 minutes, he was the outcast in the city that he owned. Meanwhile, the culprit behind this turn of events was right in front of him. It was none other than Di Fui. To make matters worse, Di Fui's parents had ruined his family. He used to be an honorable prince in the upper bound, but things took a turn for the worst when Di Fui's folks defeated his parents. Now, Di Fui himself had ruined his reputation. Ha 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 ha. Yun Yanli laughed sarcastically as he looked at Di Fui with scary red eyes. Di Fui, it's all because of you. Then, he stretched out his palm, and a long blue sword suddenly appeared. Let us fight to settle all of this once and for all. I have a huge debt to repay you. The hatred between them could only be cleaned with blood. One of them had to die. Di Fui had been faintly glaring at him, but only said a few words in reply. Good. I will fulfill your wish. The fight between these powerful men could easily turn everything within a few miles around them into dust. Hence, Yun Yanli swept through the people around him and said coldly, Go away. Everyone looked at each other and slowly retreated. Meanwhile, Di Fui squinted at them and faintly said, There is no need. He waved his hand and set a wizardry barrier around him. Only Yun Yanli and Di Fui were inside the wizardry barrier. Therefore, the others around them would remain unaffected. The wizardry barrier was almost transparent, but everyone could still see it. Perhaps, due to its transparency, everyone still felt unsafe being too close to it. Hence, none of the common people came too close to the barrier. Only Gu Shijiu, Feng Ruhua, and the rest of the guardians of the Devil Kingdom were watching from close by. Of course, the young palace master also stayed nearby. Yun Yanli could not help but take a look at the people standing at the walls of the barrier. His eyes suddenly flashed with sorrow. The people who were willing to stay close to the barrier were only those who genuinely cared about their leader. There were more than 10 people who were there for Di Fui, however, only one person seemed to be on Yun Yanli's side, which was the young palace master. The poor man did not realize that he was still wearing his wedding attire, which was a happy and lively color. However, the color's complete contradicted his current mood, where he felt depressed and lonely. Who had he worked hard for? Unfortunately, the person he loved did not love him back. He sincerely wanted to marry her and tried to give her the best that he could. Everything was carefully prepared, but now it was all just a joke. He took an opportunity to glance at Gu Shijiu, who was now in her original appearance thanks to Di Fui. Yun Yanli could see that she was entirely focused on Di Fui and that she was not concerned for him at all. Subconsciously, he heaved a sigh of disappointment. Perhaps it was time for him to wake up from his dream. It was time for him to let go. Suddenly, he looked up and laughed. Di Fui, we will not stop fighting until one of us is dead. He then charged forward toward Di Fui to start the battle. Gu Shijiu stood just outside the barrier, watching the two of them intensely. The two fighters moved swiftly, and each of their moves was a dazzling sight. Gu Shijiu was still very familiar with Di Fui's arsenal of moves. After all, they had been together for so long. In the early stages of the battle, she seemed to be more relieved as she could tell that he had already recovered. In fact, he was more powerful than he ever was as the Devil King. All of his moves seemed graceful and effortless, as if everything came naturally to him. Chapter 2568, The Culprit, 2. This person was like the sun. No matter where he went or what he did, he was shining and always attracted people's attention. He had certainly caught Gu Zijia's eyes the entire time. The pain of losing him hundreds of years ago always seemed very recent and vivid for Gu Shizhou. Nonetheless, watching him right in front of her had made everything different. She could not wait to get into his arms and travel to a place where they could have their personal, intimate time. Unfortunately, they had to settle the mess in front of them first. Di Fui was a natural leader. He had been the lord of the lower bound for nearly 10,000 years. It had become a habit for him to take care of affairs. With the memories from his previous life restored, he would definitely use his knowledge to punish the bad people here and return the Shura world to its orderly state. This came as a relief to Gu Shizhou. Although she only stayed there for more than a year, she had already regarded this place as one of her homes. She also wished that the people here could get back to their normal lives. She had been thinking about how to restore the order here but could not seem to find a way to do so on her own. Nevertheless, it would seem that she had found the solution to her problem. Since Di Fui had returned to her side, she was certain that things would get sorted out swiftly. Although Gu Shizhou was generally considered an independent person, whenever Di Fui was around her, she somehow always relied on him. She knew that she could depend on him for anything that she needed. As she contemplated the situation she was now in, the two men remained busy fighting intensely in the wizardry barrier. For once, Gu Shizhou finally looked at Yun Yanli. She knew that he was a very capable fighter who had tricks up his sleeves. However, he was not Di Fui's opponent. In fact, she could tell that he would lose the battle sooner or later. The man himself realized that he was bound to lose, and his face turned pale. He did not expect to be beaten by a child despite his many years of hard work. He was certainly sad to learn that, but there was nothing he could do about the inequality between them. He was just not as talented as his opponent. Despite giving it his all, he did not even damage Di Fui's clothing. Nevertheless, he was a man of his word and would not run away. He would not stop until one of them was dead. Perhaps, he was simply not destined to win the battle and get the girl of his dreams. As a last resort, he put together a flurry of attacks to try to hurt Di Fui and turn the tide into his favor. Even if he did not win, he should at least put up a real fight against this man who had taken everything from him. This fierce battle generated a lot of excitement for the crowd. The people on both sides were very nervous to the point where it clearly affected their breathing. They did not even dare to blink their eyes as they were afraid that they would miss something special. The people's attention was on the fight in the wizardry barrier that no one noticed that Zhu Duqing was quietly approaching Gu Shizhou. He was now only 1 foot away from her. He suddenly appeared and grabbed Gu Zijia's wrist. His speed was comparable to Gu Zijia's teleportation, and there was no time for a reaction from the crowd. He thought that he would definitely capture her, so he said, "Shizhou, you have to follow me." However, before he could finish his sentence, he was shocked by something and quickly retrieved his hand. Chapter 2569, Untitled Chapter. The wrist he grabbed seemed to be cold and hard with sharp edges. It almost cut his hand. Instead of grasping Gu Zijia's wrist, Zhu Duqing caught a sharp sword. Furthermore, the person who was holding the sword was actually Di Fui. Zhu Duqing took 2 successive steps backward and found that the wizardry barrier had been broken. Meanwhile, Yun Yanli also stumbled and almost fell to the ground at that moment. His handsome face was now green and white. Upon catching his breath, he said, "Di Fui, you have not been concentrating on the fight." When the two of them were fighting, Yun Yanli was utterly overpowered by Di Fui. He had resorted to using his full strength to attack Di Fui while risking his defense. He wanted to force Di Fui to go on the defensive. However, he did not expect Di Fui to suddenly rush out of the wizardry barrier and settle matters with Zhu Duqing. From his actions, it was evident that even during the battle, he had diverted his attention to Gu Shizhou. Yun Yanli thought that even if he would not be able to defeat him, he could at least give the man a challenge and force him to use all his skills. He had certainly not expected the man to be thinking about other things during a clash with him. There was no doubt in his mind now that there was a huge gap between them. Yun Yanli then realized that he had sold his soul and sacrificed his life to cultivate and improve himself but was still unable to best a child. If that were the case, what was all of this for? With a pale face, Yun Yanli stood weakly in the barrier. All of a sudden, he vomited a mouthful of blood. The conviction that had always supported him as a mountain collapsed. His body trembled as he said, "Di Fui, kill me." Di Fui did not look at him. Instead, he pulled Gu Shijiu into his arms and asked, "How are you? Have you been hurt?" Gu Shijiu felt a warmth in her heart. However, she seemed to giggle all of a sudden. It would appear that he regarded her to be as fragile as a piece of paper. In actuality, Zhu Duqing did not touch her at all. So why would she have been hurt? In fact, she was trying to teleport away when Zhu Duqing was just about to catch her wrist. Even if Di Fui did not rush out to save her, she would still be safe. Nonetheless, she liked his care for her, so she leaned her head in his arms. "Fortunately, I have you. I am fine." Di Fui then kissed her lips. "Be careful, don't let that pig get you." Zhu Duqing was speechless. He was a bamboo, not a pig. His eyes narrowed as he suddenly smiled. "Di Fui, your return seems too timely." Di Fui faintly replied, "Of course." He looked at the man and asked, "Who are you?" At that point, Zhu Duqing removed the disguise on his body, revealing his real face. "I am Mr. Bamboo. Devil King, don't you know me?" The crowd looked at each other as if searching for answers. Many people had heard of Mr. Bamboo from the Devil Kingdom, and of course, they were aware of the existence of the Devil King. But what were the two of them doing here? No one expected them to come to the ordinary cities. Humans and devils had always been enemies. The people here had an intuitive fear of the devils, so the onlookers who had already been close to the battlefield were now stepping back. "Mr. Zhu is just your pseudonym. I am asking you who you really are." Di Fui was not a fool. He continued, "If I am not mistaken, it is you who is the culprit behind the scene. Am I right?" Zhu Duqing looked down. After a brief moment, he seemed to look up again with a smile. "Why do you think so?" "I am only asking for clarification. Are you having trouble answering my question?" This problem had obviously caught the attention of the crowd, who were all curious as they had been personally affected by it. Countless pairs of eyes looked over as they waited for Zhu Duqing to answer. Chapter 2570, The Culprit Behind the Scenes. Zhu Duqing stood silently as he pondered his next move. After a brief moment, he looked up and smiled as he said, "Yes, I am the one behind it all." Everyone in the square broke their silence. They were furious, especially those who had been in the Shura world for the longest time. Why? Why did he want to do this? Their angry chants started to drown the entire Zhengde square. Some of the warriors were ready to chop Zhu Duqing into minced meat to avenge the death of their family members. Nevertheless, Zhu Duqing seemed to be indifferent to their plight. Whenever anyone charged forward toward him, he would merely wave his sleeves and watched as several light waves greeted those who rushed in. The light waves were orange-red and extremely bright. It appeared like a divine light that wanted to bless its believers. Those who rushed over were the ones that had suffered the most under Zhu Duqing's evil tricks. Acting purely out of emotion, they simply ran into the waves with open arms. Meanwhile, in the eyes of other people who were still watching from behind, they saw many sharp blades in the orange-red light wave that could turn anything into dust. Seeing that those people were going to plunge into the orange-red light, the audience exclaimed in fear. As they started to scream, a few colorful waves suddenly appeared and collided with the orange-red waves. Several thunderous sounds were momentarily heard. It shocked the crowd to the point where most of them retreated. The ones in the very front line that acted out of haste were shaken. Once the light waves dispersed, they looked up only to find several large pits and a stone pillar that had been cut into two pieces. The part of the stone pillar that had been cut off was shattered into pieces, revealing strange orange-red worms that were half the size of rice grains. If they did not look carefully at it, they would think it was just debris in the smoke. Apparently, this was left behind from Zhu Duqing's palm. If it were not the colorful light that intercepted the orange-red light waves, those who had rushed over would have been turned into minced meat. The crowd gasped in shock and decided not to act rashly. Zhu Duqing looked around and smiled. I didn't expect your skills to return to you so quickly. However, how long can you save them? While laughing, he moved his sleeve again, and many orange-red light waves emerged from his palm. But this time, the light was aimed at a few pots rather than the people. All of a sudden, a whistling sound could be heard from the 8 huge pots that were still burning. A lot of mist suddenly emerged from all the large pots and seemed to come together to form something. Soon, the crowd could see that it had turned into a few strange-looking animals. Tao Tai, Bifang, Fei Fei, Lai Tianho, Cheongqi. They were the ancient beasts whose blood burned in the respective huge pots. These beasts seemed extremely out of control when they emerged. They screamed loudly and rushed to the crowd. There were more than 10,000 people in the crowd now, which was certainly bad news. Just one of these beasts was enough to destroy the earth, but there were 8 of them. The people panicked and fled without thinking. However, after running a few steps, they realized that something was wrong. It seemed like they were trapped and could not run at all. They could only watch as the beasts spurted yellow sand, created a hurricane, started a flood, and blasted fireballs at them. The vast majority of the people were shackled in the square. They were screaming, crying, calling for their kids, and cursing, causing various noises everywhere. The entire square was in chaos. In this turmoil, Zhu Duqing suddenly issued a long whistle that corresponded to a whistling sound in the distance. Chapter 2571, The Culprit Behind the Scenes, 2. The whistling was getting nearer and nearer, and suddenly, a long black shadow flashed in the sky just next to Zhu Duqing. Along with the appearance of this black shadow, the people noticed their surroundings abruptly darken. Oddly though, the shadowy figure seemed to be shining. The scales on its body were black and translucent. In addition, it had a horn on its head that looked like a pearl. It was a candle dragon. Gu Zijia's heart sank as she recognized it. Meanwhile, the candle dragon rolled around in the air, while Zhu Duqing stood on it. In the brief moment that the shadow appeared, the man had changed his attire from a dark green robe to a black robe. There seemed to be stars studded on his black robes, which made him look like the starry night sky. With the candle dragon under his feet, it really looked like a powerful illusion. Just moments ago, the crowd wanted to tear off his skin. But now, everyone was frightened to the point where their legs were soft. In fact, they all involuntarily felt like bowing to him. Some were on their knees and could not emerge. Who was he? How could he have such a strong aura? Zhu Duqing, who appeared in front of Gu Shijiu, had always covered his true appearance and character. There were times where he was a bit arrogant, and even times where he was a bit hilarious. However, now that he had taken off his disguise, the previous temperaments were all gone. He no longer masked his true appearance either. The people noticed that the man had long black hair that was covered by a black feather-like jade crown. However, perhaps because he was too far away, the people here could not see his face clearly. Nonetheless, they certainly felt his aura and believed he must be someone with noble status. He stood elegantly on the back of the candle dragon and looked down on the people. It was like watching the ants swaying in the mud. He certainly looked very proud while standing over the people. In the square, the 8 evil beasts had completely surrounded everyone and were advancing to the center of the square. What should we do, master? The young palace master tightly pulled on one of Yun Yanli's sleeves. She and her subordinates were trapped as well. Unfortunately, it seemed that Yun Yanli had lost himself and was staring into the abyss. He just stood there and did not respond or move. The young palace master had to pull him away from a fireball that was headed his way. He would surely have been burnt badly if she had not done so. Yun Yanli, the big pots were set here by you. Do you know of any way we can escape? Di Fui finally spoke to the man. Yun Yanli finally raised his head and looked at his enemy, who had clearly defeated him. Why should I tell you? Do you care about the safety of these people? Di Fui sounded cold. They turned against me. Why should I care about them? Yun Yanli refuted. What about your subordinates who have stayed by your side all the time? Don't you care about them? Yun Yanli hesitated but replied nonetheless. They have betrayed me. He was apparently not able to finish his sentence. Di Fui glared at him but did not speak further. Yun Yanli did not appreciate his attitude and angrily said, they betrayed me. Should I forgive them and save them? Di Fui still did not speak. However, the cries from the surrounding people were getting louder and more desperate. Anyone with compassion would certainly struggle to listen to it and not help. Yun Yanli's face was still pale while he still kept his fingers in his sleeves. The person who came to him in his dreams had him how to set up this array. He had only learned how to ignite the flame. He never thought that there would be fierce beasts running out of these copper pots. In all honesty, he did not know what to do. He was powerless. He looked around him and heard a cry in the crowd from a child. He watched as the child was caught in some yellow sand and was swallowed alive.